Steele Facebook. You guys know about that stuff. But thanks everybody. Anna and Tom did a great job. Chairman Jeff in the back, the whole group, thanks for coming up. I'm proud to say our family has paid taxes in Antrim County for over 40 years, so I've been up to this region many times. Let me just cover a couple quick things. As Tom mentioned, ran for Congress against John Dingell, but I hadn't been involved in politics. Dr. Dan and I were kind of similar in that way. We were what you would call a paradox. But, sorry about that. He and I both ran for Congress that last cycle. I got involved in that race in March, and we raised $1 million in 8 months, made Dingell spend $2.8 million, and changed 9 seats from Democrat to Republican that had never been Republican before. That included 4 state House seats, state Senate, 4 county commission seats, and this is the importance of getting involved from the bottom up in doing these kinds of things. And so my background had really been more with the Heritage Foundation. Somebody mentioned Heritage earlier. I'm a founding committee member of the Southeast Michigan Committee for Heritage. Was a member going back in the 80s, pre-internet, pre-everything. And of course, the Heritage Foundation formed the playbook for President Ronald Reagan. And I'm proud to say my son, who's 24 years old, is the research assistant to the president of the Heritage Foundation, and travels the world with him, writing his remarks and doing his research. I'm also on one of the advisory boards of the Mackinac Center, which was mentioned earlier, and the Hillsdale College as well. My background at the University of Michigan, the family goes way back, over a dozen degrees from there in our family. My grandfather played football for Fielding Yost. Both my grandmother and grandfather had undergrad and master's degrees back in the 20s and 30s. It was pretty uncommon for a woman especially. Interestingly enough, my grandmother, Steele, was a National Alumni Award winner of distinction and was the co-chair of the first major fundraising campaign for the University of Michigan in 1964. So, I've seen Michigan inside and out, and I graduated with 2 degrees from there, including my medical degree at age 23. Was a UofM Regent scholar and served 20 years on the University of Michigan Medical School's clinical faculty. So now I run for the University of Michigan Regent, and so here's the background and the ideas, the issues. In-state money, in-state student. Every qualified Michigan high school graduate shall be accepted at the University of Michigan. It should be up to the student to decide if the university is right for them, not for the university to decide if the student is right for the university. There shall be no out-of-state students. No out-of-state students until the in-state students are accommodated.
Yeah.
So foreign students until the in-state and out-of-state students are accommodated.
Yes. Yes.
Traditionally, going way back, my grandfather came from Michigan from South Dakota to play football. My grandmother came from Illinois. Of course, they stayed in Michigan, and so did I. So there will, of course, be out-of-state students. But these marginal students are best students that get sent elsewhere. The very best student in the state of Michigan, high school in 2006, did not get accepted to the University of Michigan, but was accepted to Harvard, MIT, Chicago, Stanford, and Yale, and left the state. These are the kind of students that leave the state that we have to keep here. On curriculum, so that's kind of divisions. Curriculum, School of Literature, Science, and Arts. If you're going to say that you're going to have a liberal arts education in the United States today, I don't know how you could possibly get an undergraduate degree and not having studied the founding documents of the United States, including the Declaration, Constitution.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Source documents. Not what some professor says the source documents say, but from the source documents, and this is critical. At George Mason Law, they teach the Federalist Papers, and that law professor constantly says his students say this is one of the toughest assignments they've ever had. And he says, well, of course it is. The Federalist Papers were written for the average upstate farmer in New York in 1787. And this is what's happened to public education in the United States, and it has to be reversed. And our future does not stand a chance unless we can get our young people to understand what made this country what it is today. So there's a curriculum. Also, on economics, if they're going to be teaching Keynesian economics, there shall also be a section on Austrian business cycle economics.
Yes.
And then, endowment of $7.8 billion, second largest endowment in public university in the country. Last year grew at 24.8%. How many people know that the federal government took over the student loan program?
Yes.
And where did they do that? That was in the health care bill. The Affordable Care Act, and then 2,700 pages, the federal government took over the student loan program. Recently, Obama was on the And so what they said is, well, you only have to pay that 10% of your disposable income, and then after 20 years you quit paying. And the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, said, well, that's okay, because by then they paid back more than the value of your loan anyway. Wouldn't you love to go to the bank and tell them that about your mortgage? This is our problem that Dr. Dan faces, having to deal with people in Washington, D.C. who don't even understand the basic concept of principal and interest. And so what I'm going to propose as University of Michigan Regent is that the University of Michigan now participate with the Federal Financial Loan Program, and that the endowment be used as the bank for all loans to Michigan high school. First off, if we go by the president's idea, after 20 years, the money goes to, the loan gets foisted off on who? Taxpayers. And under that conditions, the administration doesn't even have to look the family and the students in the eye and even act like they're concerned about the price going up, because they know in the end they're going to get their money from the federal government. I think if the endowment person running the endowment is all of a sudden handing out this money, they're going to be doing two things. One, they're going to be making sure those students get through. They're going to make sure they get a degree. They can have them go out and get a job and pay that endowment back. And that will help to restrain tuition. Now, we talk about a lot about venture capital. Recently, Mary Sue Coleman, the president of the university, said we're going to use a small part of that endowment for venture capital, which I agree with. You got $7.8 billion. It's hard to invest it all. It's hard to spend it, too. They just reduce the amount that they distribute out of the endowment every year. You can imagine that while they're raising tuition. But I'm sure our governor would tell you that the idea of venture capital, and you understand, venture capital you put in at the beginning to get it going. Venture capital doesn't get put in year after year after year, like 170 years worth. I am sick and tired of hearing the regents and the administrators at that university complain about their state appropriation when they have received tens of billions of dollars over the last 170 years to create that $7.8 billion endowment and make that university one of the premier universities in the world. And so, hey, if they come and say no appropriations, I will be there on the Board of Regents to say, let's make it work. We got $7.8 billion. Let's figure it out. The taxpayers and citizens of Michigan have put enough in already. This is the key. The taxpayers and citizens of Michigan have provided the venture capital over 170 years of that university, and it is absolutely time that the university do more to keep our best and brightest here in the state to make this state go. And the other thing on the endowment is, I heard mention of the science and engineering degrees. The so-called STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering, and math. 68% of all graduates and advanced degrees from those universities are foreign students. Not foreign, North American citizens, foreign students, which is under a visa program that makes them go home and compete against us. I am going to recommend that every Michigan high school graduate who graduates with an advanced degree in the so-called STEM degrees and stays in the state of Michigan for 5 years applies to the endowment. Not to the taxpayers, not a tax credit. They apply to the endowment for a complete tuition refund as part of the return on payment, the return on investment that the taxpayers and citizens have given. Why would I be your best choice? We've got fine candidates. We've heard from Dr. Dan and Rob over here and other great candidates, and there's another candidate as well that you're not hearing from. First, I'm going to be the only candidate at the bottom of the ticket that can possibly campaign effectively for the top of the ticket. Healthcare issue is going to be big. I'm out speaking on healthcare all the time. In fact, Antrim County women are hosting me in a large event May 14th at healthcare. We'll learn more about that. I will be the only candidate in a general and primary election that has had the endorsement of right to life. I will be the only candidate in a general election that has had the highest rating for the NRA. I will be the only candidate in a general election who has proven that they can get Reagan Democrats to vote for them. In my race against Steele, in 4 elections, he had lost 1 precinct in 4 elections. In Monroe County, I won 70 out of 75 precincts, a heavily Democrat UAW's county, and I won 70% of the townships and municipalities in that district and lost just because of Ann Arbor. You know, Governor Snyder got beat in Ann Arbor 2-1, I got beat in Ann Arbor 3-1. And last of all, and just a general comment about this position, the state constitution makes the Board of Regents a statewide elected position, and I would just ask you, how often do you see your Board of Regents members at an event like this if it's not a convention year? And you see your state, your Secretary of State and your Attorney General all the time. I'm going to have 1 day of open office hours in Ann Arbor every month, and I will spend 1 day of every month in a different congressional district, therefore making a lap of the state approximately once per year. This is an important position. This is an activist position. This isn't a position of reward and resume. This is a position to make the future of of Michigan better, using the power vested to it in the state constitution. So I look forward to your support at the convention and then in the general election, because I know that you guys are anybody but Obama and anybody but Stabenow. I'm going to be the one Regent candidate not only for the university, but for the top of the ticket, be able to make that 30 or 40,000 vote difference. Thank you for your support.
Here, here. Woo! Woo!